ACT English, more comprehension in less time. This is part 2 of our series, and we go into punctuation. This is Ken Boyd, the owner of St. Louis Test Preparation. You'll see our email and our phone number listed, and our website will be shown at the end of the presentation. So we go into punctuation. We start with the basics, talking about commas and when commas are used. To separate independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction. You can think of those clauses as little separate standalone sentences, and when we connect them with a conjunction like and or but, we use a comma. Here's an example. He wanted to swim in the lake, comma, but Bob didn't bring his goggles. The pieces, the clauses on both sides of the word but, you can think of as independent sentences, and we put a comma right before the word but. Separate items in a sentence. Here's a list of tasks that somebody did. He washed off the dish, comma, put it in the dishwasher, comma, and started the machine. Those items, those happen to be separate tasks, are separated by commas. Other common uses. Separating coordinating adjectives modifying the same noun. Now that's a mouthful. Let's explain what that means. He drove his sleek silver sports car. Sleek and silver are words that modify or change the meaning of that noun. In this case, they make it more specific. So when you see them together, they're normally separated by a comma. Sleek and silver, those two adjectives, separated by a comma. Set off phrases and clauses from the rest of the sentence, so sort of visually separating a phrase or a clause. And when we talk about phrases and clauses, we mean those that are non-restrictive, those that amplify or increase the meaning of. Those are explanatory, that explain. Amplify or explain. Here's our example. When the painter finished the wall, he started to clean his brushes. He started to clean his brushes is amplified by when the painter finished the wall. One connects to the other. One piece of that amplifies the other piece, and when we have two of those together, we separate them by a comma. There are some less frequent uses that are a little harder to follow. Setting off contrasting or non-essential phrases and clauses. Think about if the piece of information is important in the sentence. Is it important? Or is it something you could just throw away? A throwaway sort of a fact. So my hint here is separate information that's less important. For example, Joe, comma, who was a great musician, comma, passed his driver's license exam. You really didn't need to know that Joe was a great musician. It really didn't relate to the driver's exam point made in the sentence. Set off in a positive. Let's define what a positive is. A noun or phrase that renames or explains something. Renames or explains the noun it follows. For example, the detective, comma, a 30-year veteran of the police force, comma, started asking the questions. We redefine the detective by telling you he's a 30-year veteran of the police force. So the 30-year veteran portion of the sentence replaces or takes the place of the noun detective, and we use a comma. When not to use commas. After a subject or verb. Some people avoided comma the long line of traffic would be incorrect. One way that you can find these errors, and something that I'll mention later on in the video many times, you wouldn't pause when you say some people avoided the long line of traffic. There's no pause after the word avoided, therefore there's no punctuation needed. After a conjunction, we have a couple of types, a coordinating conjunction like and, but, for, etc. Or a subordination conjunction like although or because. The more important point is that you realize that these words are conjunctions and not necessarily the types. Here's our example. The spa in Arizona was plush and, relaxing. We don't need that comma after the word and. So you'll see that both of these slides we use the word after. The first is after a subject or verb, the second is after a conjunction. So be careful when you're considering using a comma after a keyword. More on when not to use commas. If you are introducing a series, not within the series of things itself, but if you're introducing a series, you wouldn't use a comma, you would use something different. For example, students in high school need to, comma, write effectively, study consistently, and take responsibility for completing assignments. We don't need a comma after the word to. We'd use a different kind of punctuation that we'll get to later. A final thought. Think about reading aloud. If you pause when you read out loud, it may be proper to include a comma. Think about the newspaper reporter reading a story or someone making a speech. Where they pause probably means they need some punctuation. There's a lot of great resources at the bookstore. I happen to take this information from the Barron's ACT book of '08. You've got a lot of great resources at the library, the bookstore, also the ACT website. That's the end of part 2 of our English discussion. You can find part 3 on YouTube. You'll be able to get live tutoring in several different cities and live chat sessions. The information's at our website, www.stltest.net. See you next time.